This is a reconstructed image of a young man who had no name. His identity, a mystery that police believed impossible to solve. That was, until 20 years later, when amateur internet sleuths on Reddit finally cracked the case. The young man's body was found on June 26, 1995, at a gruesome scene off of US Route 58 West. Tire tracks veering off the highway led to a smoking Vanagon smashed against a pair of large trees. Two dead young men were found partly ejected, hanging out of the windshield with their faces covered in lacerations. State Trooper Ted Jones arrived on the scene and searched their bodies for identification. The driver had ID Michael Hager, a 21-year-old student at the University of South Carolina. The other young man in the passenger seat, wearing a Grateful Dead t-shirt, had no identification and no belongings other than what was in his pockets: 4 quarters, a yellow Bic lighter, and 2 Grateful Dead ticket stubs. Depending on what source you read, a note was also found either in his pocket or in the vicinity that read, "Jason, sorry we had to go. See you around. Call me." It was signed by Carolyn T. and Carolyn O. There was a drawing on it, believed to be of Jerry Garcia, the lead vocalist and guitarist of the Grateful Dead band. And there was a number, but unfortunately, the number had no area code. The number on the note was called, probably using local area codes, but it led to a dead end. Michael's family was informed. They were distraught, but they had no idea who the man in the passenger seat was. So, Officer Ted Jones concluded that the young man was probably a hitchhiker. When the autopsy was done, there were no drugs in his or Michael's systems, which led Trooper Jones to believe that the driver fell asleep at the wheel. This lined up with how the tracks veered off of the highway so early before the crash. When the unidentified passenger's fingerprints were sent to the FBI database, no matches were found, and combining this with the fact that his face was covered in lacerations meant that identification would be very difficult. But they identified that he was between 15 and 21 years old, with brown eyes, long curly brown or dark blonde hair, dyed reddish. His teeth were well cared for, but there was no extensive dental work done, as he still had his wisdom teeth. Aside from the tie-dyed Grateful Dead t-shirt, he had on beaded and macrame necklaces, light blue Levi's jeans, and black Fila running shoes size 11.5. His left ear was pierced, but wasn't wearing an earring at the time. They found a scar on his back, a faded tattoo on his right arm, and a homemade star tattoo on his upper left arm. But with nothing else to go on, Ted Jones focused his attention on the 2 Grateful Dead ticket stubs, which were for shows on June 24th and June 25th, the 2 days before the car crash. Both Grateful Dead concerts took place at RFK Stadium, Washington, D.C., about 180 miles north of the crash site, as a part of what ended up being an important tour, as it was 2 months before the band's founder, Jerry Garcia, passed away. They traced who bought the tickets and found it was sold to a man from Pennsylvania who was very much alive and not named Jason. He was a scalper that had bought 20 tickets and resold them. But when State Trooper Ted Jones interviewed him, the Pennsylvania man couldn't recall who he had sold them to. It was yet another dead end. There were plenty of clues, but no identity found on the side of the road. So let's discover where this road leads us and bring him home.
What are you doing?
Just going over a case where a simple fatal car crash turned into a mystery that stumped investigators for decades. Who was this young man? Did he have a family? How long were they going to be left in the dark wondering what happened to their boy?
Here, let me take a look. Yeah. Oh. Aha! After carefully analyzing all the evidence, I've concluded that he was a fan of the Grateful Dead who just so happened to be the inspiration behind my heavy metal band, the Circuit Freaks.
Incorrect statements detected. Number 1, it is not your band. It is a collaboration between you, myself, and the Tardigrade. Number 2, the Grateful Dead is a band from the 60s that mixed rock, country, blues, jazz, and several other styles, none of which sound anything like heavy metal.
If you're such a musical expert, then why are your vocals always so off-pitch?
At least my rhythm is intact. Perhaps a drum machine would serve in your place. My cousin is available.
You can't kick me out of the band, because I quit.
Because of this apparent love for the Grateful Dead being one of the only things known about him at the time, the unidentified man, or John Doe as they are called, became known within web sleuth communities as the Grateful Doe. A clever pun if I do say so myself. Since this Grateful Dead fan, or Deadheads as they refer to themselves, was a hitchhiker and bought tickets from a scalper for the 2 shows at RFK Stadium, one might theorize he was following the band on their tour, except he was heading south from the stadium. The next tour location was in Michigan, northwest of the stadium.
Huh. Well, where was he going then?
It's not clear. To visit someone? Maybe they were making a detour. Let's look into the driver, Michael, and see if he can give us any clues. He was with his fiancée in Fairfax County, Virginia, when he left her that morning around 7:45 a.m. After traveling south, he stopped at his father's house in Williamsburg, Virginia at noon. His father wasn't there, so Michael left a phone message saying that he was headed to visit his mother in Inman, South Carolina. But on the way there, he crashed on Highway 58. A neighbor of the father reported having seen a young man with Michael when he stopped at the house during the visit to Williamsburg. This would suggest that our Grateful Doe was picked up somewhere south of Fairfax, not too far from the Grateful Dead concert. It was believed they were both deadheads, and likely shared a bond because of that, even though Michael hadn't attended the recent concerts. But according to the investigation from State Trooper Jones, Michael was alone when he visited his father's place.
That doesn't make sense. The neighbor said another man was with him.
Yes, that's what was reported in a Freelance Star article from 1996. But Jones claims that was incorrect. If that's right, it would mean Grateful Doe actually hitched a ride somewhere between Gloucester and Emporia, much further south.
Yep, not liking this Ted Jones guy. I mean, the Grateful Doe went to JFK Stadium for those concerts. Ain't that far from where Michael started?
Yes.
So wouldn't it make sense that that's about where they met up? Not way down south at the end of the trip?
Well, our Grateful Doe could have already hitchhiked further down when he met Michael. Regardless of where our Grateful Doe was picked up, the crash happened at around 1:30 p.m. that day, 90 minutes after Michael left his father's place.
Okay, so we got a whole timeline. Now what? Surveillance footage? DNA sequencing? Super enhanced reflections off of someone's eyeballs?
With cases like this, only so much can be done. At this point, with all the dead ends, Trooper Jones needed help from the public. They released all of this information, but couldn't release a photo due to the lacerations. Another problem was that some news reported him as a redhead, despite having only red-dyed hair. This lowered the chances of identifying him significantly, since there was no image of him released. To make matters even worse, coverage of the crash was only in the Virginia area, even though it was suspected he might be from out of state.
And let me guess, nobody came forward.
Exactly.
Seriously? This whole thing feels like a bunch of fumbles. Not even a sketch or nothing?
A forensic sketch was only released 7 months after the crash, at which time news did report it again.
7 months? Why so long?
It's not clear why.
And it was only reported in Virginia, right?
Yup.
Jeez, Ted Jones wasn't doing nothing.
While there may be some fumbles, he was trying. Trooper Jones sent a description to all the police agencies in the country and received missing persons reports from 15 of them. He also sent the fingerprints to the Secret Service, which had a larger database than the FBI. The case information and sketch were mailed by him to news organizations in hopes of more coverage. But despite the hard work of Jones, nothing came out of those efforts. Jones said in an interview, "I investigated everything from every angle, and nothing ever panned out."
Okay, maybe I'm being a bit hard on him, but I still feel like there could have been more done here.
Well, from Jones' perspective, all he could do now was pass the investigation over to the State Medical Examiner's office in Richmond, Virginia, to compare the young man to missing case reports. And so, that's when the case went cold, and the Grateful Doe, whose first name may or may not have been Jason, would go unidentified for years to come. While the case files and evidence gathered dust in storage, the internet started to become a staple in homes around the world, connecting people like never before. It was a new era, with unknown possibilities and noisy modems. In 1999, the true crime community website, Web Sleuths, and a missing persons website, the Doe Network, were launched. But it wouldn't be until the mid-2000s, nearly 10 years after the crash, when this case found a home on the internet. In 2004, a profile page for the Grateful Doe was created on the Doe Network. And in 2005, user Trying2ID posted about it on Web Sleuths, asking for help. People who were moved by the story investigated and scrutinized all the details from the comfort of their homes.
Sounds like your kind of people, bro.
They absolutely are. Theories ran rampant. Some questioned if the note was his and if it actually said Jason on it. They also speculated that he may have been a runaway. Others wondered if his stuff might have been stolen.
Which would explain why he didn't have any ID on him.
User Trying2ID took charge of the investigation. A vigilante detective, if you would. They also showed frustration with law enforcement, saying, "He died over 10 years ago. They do not have time to help this young man, so why not release information to me? Someone that is willing to give any extra time I have to this young man."
Yeah, like if they had the phone number instead of that blurred out image, a bunch of people could have called tons of area codes.
Well, it's likely for privacy reasons. Also, one might assume law enforcement can't just release evidence to any citizen that asks for it.
An exception could have been made, though. I mean, the police couldn't solve this case, but maybe these people could.
Well, they weren't the only ones to show frustration with law enforcement. A few pointed out some things that Trooper Jones could have done. One user suggested he should have gone to the next show and handed out flyers. But the sketch only came about 7 months later. Other users helped TryInto ID. Many took it upon themselves to compare the sketch and descriptions to missing person reports. When they found similarities, they posted their findings on web sleuths, and TryInto ID contacted the medical examiner in Virginia. But every time they thought they had a match, fingerprints proved otherwise. But one promising theory appeared. There's a group called the Wharf Rats.
Hey, that's a pretty cool band name.
They weren't a band, but a support group, like AA. At the time, it was spawned from the Deadhead culture. They would go to concerts and hold sessions in between sets to help members lead a drug and alcohol-free lifestyle.
Oh, okay, that's cool. What's the theory? Grateful Doe was one of them?
I'm not sure, but the most prominent founder of the group, the one they called Mom, her name was Carolyn Thomas.
Caroline T. from that note.
It did sound promising, and a few of the web sleuths pointed it out. So TryInto ID called her, and unfortunately, she said she wasn't the Carolyn T. from the note.
But Caroline T. Caroline Thomas. She's at all the concerts.
She gave no reasoning, but the web sleuths believed she had no reason to lie. There's lots of Carolyn T's out there after all.
Ugh, these theories are going nowhere. Not a single break, nothing.
For now. Luckily, these web sleuths were very persistent. Carolyn Thomas did agree to hand out the information to all the deadheads she knew at the time. At least that's something.
Did any of them recognize him?
Well, not necessarily. But getting the word out was important, and maybe they knew somebody that knew somebody.
Come on, this thing is pointless. Ugh.
You seem angrier than usual.
This meatbag demanded authorship credit on our new song, Neon Storms. Yet there was zero contribution by said meatbag.
I got a drum solo in it, and I'm the face of the band. Cause I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm the only one of us with the face.
Excessive diva personality traits detected. Advising you to get over it.
Right. Well, despite the efforts of these at-home detectives, years would pass, and hope would fade. But there wasn't anything stopping these communities from trying to solve this case. In 2012, it got another push, this time from the help of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They posted a new computer-generated image of the Grateful Doe on their website, using the autopsy photos as a reference. The recreation was more clear and realistic, but people were quick to note that it looked different from the original sketch. They believed that the trauma to his face attributed to this discrepancy. Regardless of this, users spread the new image around, hoping someone might recognize him. That same year, a Facebook page was set up by users Alyssa and Leisha. Like on Web Sleuths, the members put their detective hats on and looked into missing persons reports. But with all the dead ends they faced, more theories ran wild. Some thought that he could have been an abducted child, a foster kid, or someone stole his identity while his family went on believing he was alive. That's why these two communities spent years looking for Grateful Doe's identity, driven by emotions, thinking, what if this had been their child? But despite all the effort, it was hard to hold on to hope. They needed a break in the case, or perhaps they needed to break the internet. And that's exactly what happened on New Year's Eve 2014, nearly 20 years since the crash. In an attempt to get more eyes on the Grateful Doe, a